So just the invitation is to find any way to be that feels good for you. That can be upright, that can be relaxed, really whatever feels comfortable, supportive.
There's an extra cushion too if anyone needs it.
Anyone?
Anyone good?
You can close your eyes if that feels good, and you can also just rest your gaze on the floor in front of you. And just beginning with intention, setting an intention that since we're here, to really be here for the next 15, 20 minutes, setting down having to be anyone, having to do anything, having to perform, having to be a meditator. And let's take a few longer, slower, deeper breaths, just at your own rhythm, and letting go of anything that's not needed right now. Now, whenever you feel ready, just letting the breath find a natural rhythm. So, really letting go of the reins, letting go of any control over the breath. In this style of practice or of meditation, kind of trusting the wisdom of the body to do what it needs to do to feel comfortable, to regulate, to find a sense of ease. So already we're bringing mindfulness to the fore, to the forefront of experience through the rhythm of the breath. And noticing, being curious about what feels good, about what feels supportive. And we're just allowing the thinking mind, the planning mind, the conceptual mind to just fall to the background of experience, not pushing it away, but just taking the attention, taking the fuel away from it, and giving the mind something to do by staying with the breath. Here, this is your job. The next 15 minutes here, can you sit here and be present for each breath that comes in, that leaves the body? The Buddha's instructions for mindfulness often involved immersing mindfulness in the body. Mindfulness immersed in the body. The human nervous system has this knowing quality which permeates the entire body. So to open into that, we're going to do a body scan, sensing through the body, starting at the top of the head, relaxing the muscles of the scalp, noticing if there's any holding in the forehead, relaxing the muscles of the thinking mind, and letting the jaw release a little bit as well, the tongue. And the eyes, even if the eyes are closed. Allowing the shoulders to release back a little bit. Feeling down through the weight of the arms, the upper arms, the forearms, and the hands. Just feeling that sense of connectivity, fluidity in the body, the way each in-breath brings in a sense of energy which permeates through the body, through the bloodstream. Relaxing the muscles of the chest, the stomach, and especially down in the lower belly, the abdomen. This is the place that so often tightens up when there's bad news or fear or anxiety. So inviting in a sense of safety and ease into the lower belly. Feeling the contact points with the cushion, with the mat. Feeling that sense of solidity where the sit bones connect with the chair, the cushion. Noticing this kind of upright axis from the top of the head down through the sit bones. Kind of the sense of dignity, wisdom, through this simple embodied act. Relaxing down through the upper legs, the calves, the shins, all the way down through the feet and the toes. How do you know that you're alive right now? Tuning into that most fundamental knowing. Beneath the identity, beneath the plans, the ideas, the feelings, there's the simple knowing. Through this knowing, the sounds of the road pass through. The temperature of the room is felt. Just spending a minute, the full body awareness. So top of the head, all the way to the bottom of the feet. Staying with the rhythm of the breath. Tuning into this quality of mindfulness. With a kind of effortless effort. Noticing the sense of space in the mind. Openness, the receptivity. This quality of awareness, which is a non-doing. And almost to tune into it sometimes, it requires continually untangling the mind from what it wants to get tangled up in and returning. It's really so much of what this practice is. Not acquiring something new, but uncovering this presence of mind which is already there. And from that place, there's no judgment. There's no aggravation or restlessness. It's just the simple presence of mind. Some of the great masters of the Thai forest tradition will always say, awareness of a feeling is not the feeling. Awareness of anxiety is not anxiety. Awareness of a thought is not the thought. All of these things can come and go. But there's the steadiness of mind which pervades experience. We've been sitting for about 15 minutes now, so noticing the shift in the quality of your mind. Doesn't mean that you're enlightened and everything's perfect, but is there a quality of a bit more steadiness? Is there a heightened awareness? Can there be a sense of openness? Giving the mind some breathing room. For these last few minutes, just giving yourself permission for this awareness to be as vast as you want it to be. As wide as this room, as wide as the horizon. resting in that, and noticing what tries to contract that awareness. And as we come to a close, sending wishes that any benefit from this humble, simple practice be shared. May it be for the well-being, for the sanity of this community, of this world, may it be a small drop in the bucket of peace. And may it be a benefit for ourselves, for others, for any being that may be struggling. And for the benefit and for the freedom and the liberation and the welfare of all beings. May all beings be free. I'll share some thoughts and then we'll have some time for open discussion at the end. So this word dharma or dhamma in Pali, it just refers to reality, to truth, to how things are. And it's said to be timeless, encouraging investigation, like beckoning to come and see, to see into it, and visible in the here and now. So this is something that kind of transcends even a spiritual tradition, just reality, nature, I guess you could say. In Buddhist teachings, it's not to be taken on the word of a teacher or a scripture, but it's to be understood through investigation and insight as to how things are, how things really are. And so what allows for insight to arise is this direct knowing, this attentiveness, or awareness, which is called sati in the early Buddhist teachings, which has been translated as mindfulness. And so one way that I've come to just kind of understand this in my own experience is mindfulness is kind of like a dropping beneath so many layers of maybe what my mind is putting on top of things, And rather than adding something extra, like mindfulness being this thing that I have to acquire, that it's out there, really dropping into an awareness which is already here, but often is obscured by various layers in the mind. And so to tap into this kind of bare awareness, the mind needs to release. There needs to be release from projections, constructions, distortions, proliferations, all these things. At the beginning of every sit, I always encourage, like, setting down having to be anyone, having to do anything. I know for myself, I always kind of feel that momentum in the mind of just being human, of having to do so many things. And so part of what, especially at the beginning of a sit, it's helpful to just, can I just set down to the best of my ability some of those things so that this awareness comes more clear, comes to the forefront, so that I can rest in that a little bit more easily. The Pali word for projections, proliferations, all this is papancha. It's one of my favorite words because it kind of sounds like the thing that it is. It also would be a really good brand for some popcorn, but that is side note. And what it does is the mind projects interpretations, opinions, and thoughts internally onto the world and to what's happening around. So it creates this layer or kind of a lens through which things are experienced. And so dropping into mindfulness, bare attention, is a means of clearing up what's happening in the mind, grounding the mind powerfully in the present, using the breath, using the body. So that way it's easier to recognize. So there's space. I can recognize sound. I can recognize that the awareness of a thought is not the thought. There's this untangling process that can happen. So how to drop beneath? The Buddha taught 4 applications of mindfulness. Mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feeling tone, hedonic tone, mindfulness of the mind itself, and then what are called dharmas, which are categories of things, which is going to be a little too deep for us to go into today. So I'm just going to talk about the body, the feeling tone, and mind, because I think they're really, really just helpful applications of mindfulness. So a lot of proliferation can be fueled by like disconnection from the body. So this act of mindfulness of breathing is the foundation of the style of practice we do here every time. Might seem repetitive even, doing a body scan, focusing on the breath. Seems like the most simple instruction. And the idea is that can have a deeply grounding effect on the mind. It's like, just here, just this. I remember hearing it said one time that, like, why is the breath the object for meditation? But it's kind of like, if you just sat down and you weren't doing anything else, it's kind of the most obvious thing that's happening. There's not much else happening physically when everything else settles down. And for me, over time, it's really developed a sense of like coming home, something to return to. And this word sati actually means to remember. So the Buddha used the word remembering for this act of mindfulness. Upasaka Ki Nanyon, who was a lay woman from Thailand in the mid-1900s, I'm going to be quoting her a few times. She says, if the mind can stay with itself and not go out looking for things to criticize or latch onto, it can maintain a natural form of stillness. I love that last end of that sentence, a natural form of stillness. So there's many ways to encourage this, but this whole body awareness is a really helpful practice. And there's also a lot of movement practices like yoga and things like that, which also emphasize this. Being aware of the body from the body reduces the proliferation, grounds the mind in the present moment. And so there's a lot of other encouragements in mindfulness of the body. I won't get into too many of them, but one of them is just postures, daily life, walking, standing, moving, lying down, bringing the same awareness as one moves through the day. Going for a walk, on the way to work, walking, driving the car, whatever it is, retaining some degree of continuity of that can help the mind stay grounded, stay in the present moment. We'll also be doing a retreat later in April, focusing on the elements of the body. This is another part of mindfulness of the body. I won't have too much time to get into it today, but it focuses on meditating on the elements of the body: the earth, the wind, the water, the fire, and the way these elements create the experience of the person. And it's a way of kind of breaking down the egoic structure in a way by noticing these different qualities. So feeling and feeling tone is an inherent part of just the human experience. It's built into the nervous system of the body. There's no way to get through this life without unpleasant feelings or pleasant feelings. And the way the Buddha taught it is that there's this kind of spectrum where it's often just hovering around neutral, but it can range from pleasant to very pleasant, to unpleasant and to very unpleasant. And the instructions around mindfulness are just to notice that. It's to actually just notice what's happening, because it's such a foundational part of human experience, impacts the mind in such a deep way, and often goes unnoticed. So an example of this, I've been kind of sick for the last 5 or 6 days. I'm just kind of coming out of it. I think on Friday, I woke up and I was like, I feel absolutely terrible. Like I'm not getting out of bed. I'm just going to sit here. And then I think it was by 1 o'clock, I stepped outside and it was sunny. I was like, I think I feel good. Like I'm straight. Go get a coffee, come home by 6 o'clock p.m. I'm like, I feel absolutely terrible. Full circle in one day. So they can have a big impact on the mind, these feelings. And so much experience can be motivated by these basic feeling tones. It can create perceptions of how an experience is going, perceptions of another person. I always use this example of being in a difficult conversation and noticing how much unpleasant feeling tone can come up and how that's impacting what I'm hearing the other person say. It can distort often what they're saying, and I'm hearing it differently. This is why therapists will often have you repeat back exactly what you heard the person say, because the feeling tone can have such a huge impact. And so bringing a deep attention to this can start to show how the mind is constantly, subtly reacting to that. Wanting more of the pleasant, pushing away the unpleasant, and bringing mindfulness to that can start to break that reactivity. Doing that in a seated session, developing a sense of equanimity with whatever is happening in the body can help to break that pattern of the mind to constantly want something different from what's currently happening. And so the last category we're going to cover today is the mind. The word in Pali for this is called citta, C-I-T-T-A. And if you go to Southeast Asia or a lot of the countries where early Buddhism is kind of spread and been maintained, I remember the first retreat I went on, I was talking to the teacher and saying, like, God, my mind just keeps doing this. And he would say, no, mind, right here. And so the Buddhist conception of mind is really not the thought or the thinking, but the awareness itself. And so that can be an embodied experience. It's not necessarily just here or even just here, but the sense of the knowingness, subjective center of experience, I guess. And so this is important because this is where suffering arises. This is where pain arises. And this is also where freedom is possible. From the Buddhist perspective, when liberation happens, when nirvana happens, it is the citta, it is the heart mind, they call it sometimes. This is where the release can happen. Because this is where the craving, where the aversion, where the delusion, it all happens in this place of the mind. So bringing awareness to this state of mind can be deeply liberating. Particularly noticing when there's strong craving or when there's strong aversion, how that can color the mind completely. I know for myself, if I wake up angry, I will be angry at everything for the whole day. Doesn't matter what it is, you know? It's like mad at the cars that are stopping at the stop sign for a very valid reason, because there's probably someone trying to cross the street. It just starts to create this lens that it paints over everything. Or wanting to be praised. That is something I don't think I realized until I started meditating, that I had been investing so much time and energy into a form of thirst, of craving that was never going to be fulfilled. Get it, just want more. Get it, just want more. So to notice when those things are there can be deeply liberating. Notice like, oh, this is actually what's happening right now. This is ill will, this is aversion, this is craving, this is wanting, this is painful. Doesn't mean to have no desires, but when there's an attachment and a clinging and a grasping, noticing the friction, so that what can happen is the mind naturally can start to release from that and discover, in a sense, itself. That in awareness itself is not constricted. It's naturally open and spacious and unbounded. In this part of the sutta, the Buddha says the instructions are to notice the craving, notice the aversion, and then to also notice when the mind is concentrated. Notice what that feels like in meditation when the mind is focused. Notice when it's expansive. And notice when it's liberated, when it's free, when it's not constricted at all. I know I had a moment for myself. There's, you hear so many teachings about liberation and nirvana, it can sound so far off. But being, starting to get a sense in moments of being like, oh, this is something that is very real, actually. This is something that is very possible. To be free in this deep way in the mind, where so much of my life had been seeking it elsewhere, seeking it outside. To realize that there was this possibility within, for me, was very inspiring. So mindfulness, from the Buddhist perspective, it's not just about stress reduction, though that's part of it, but it's about liberation, about a complete freedom. The teachings say over and over again, the end of suffering. Not the end of pain, not the end of discomfort, but the end of suffering. Seeing the futility and the stress associated with grasping, with patterns of aversion, seeing that it just keeps the mind spinning in a circle. And then the beauty and the freedom of discovering how the mind can release into itself in a way. So mindfulness, sense of dropping beneath the layers of papancha, dropping beneath the noise of the air compressor, this kind of grounding quality of the body. These three applications are really helpful to remember. The body, this kind of grounding quality, immersing mindfulness in the body. Feeling tone, having some degree of equanimity through pleasant, through unpleasant, and even neutral. And then the mind, noticing what's happening in the mind, noticing patterns, noticing when the mind always wants something, when the mind always gets aversive. And then also, of course, the release, noticing the possibility, the potential for freedom in the mind. I'm going to end with one more quote by Upasaka Ki Nanyon. She says, "Don't go searching for the Dhamma outside, for it lies within. Peace lies within. But we have to contemplate so that we're aware all around, subtly and deep down."